In just a few days, I'll be recording a new album for CD Records. It will be all music by Shawn Okpebholo, and I'll get to perform alongside Rhiannon Giddens, Will Liverman, Reginald Mobley, Karen Slack, and Julian Velasco. I'm really looking forward to the project. One of the pieces that I'll be recording with Rhiannon and with Julian is called An Echo, an Ending, and the text is by Marcus Amaker. I wanted to share a little bit with you about some of the details in the score that I find really interesting, some unique challenges in this particular passage, and maybe just share a little bit about my process in terms of coming to understand the music on a level where I feel like I can try to do justice to the composer's intentions, really honor every detail in the score, and hopefully make some interpretive decisions that will be meaningful and convey the spirit of the music as effectively as possible. So with that, let me share some of the details of the score with you. So the passage that we'll look at today starts right here and ends right here. We've got Rhiannon's line up here, the voice line. We've got Julian's saxophone line here, and then the grand staff of the piano here. Taking a look at the right hand, the piano part, obviously we're in a very high register. We've got this gigantic rolled chord that goes all the way from a B flat up to an F, then some chords, and then we've got some interesting writing here. What we notice that's sort of interesting right away is that the composer, Shawn, is putting upwards stems on these notes and downward stems on these notes. So that's giving us some good information. That's telling us that in his mind these are probably two separate lines, two separate voices that need to be treated individually within the right hand. Looking at the left hand part, we've got quite a lot of clef changes going on between bass clef and treble clef and back and forth. A lot of rests that are occurring underneath held notes in the right hand. And then again here at the end, we notice this interesting situation where we've got several things happening at once in terms of rest. We've got this half note that cuts off here while the other voice in the right hand continues upwards. And then we've got this dotted half note which was tied over from the previous bar, and there's just a quarter note rest there. So we want to make sure that we get those details in place. And that sort of thing happens throughout this score. So I'm going to erase those marks real quick, and we can look at some specifics. So looking at the right hand part, this line here, we've got this B flat, the high B flat down to the F, down to the D flat, and then down to the B flat. That is obviously one line because this second voice comes in with the down stems on it. That melodic content is important. That's actually motivically important content. If we look at another place in the score, we can see that it's actually coming from some other important words. So if we look at this line here, soon be home, B flat, F, D flat, those are the same pitches with the same contour, same general rhythmic sense. So those are important pitches that are motivically important in the piece. If we look at the piano part again and look at this line here, this sort of maybe what we could call an alto line in the piano part, we go from an A flat up to this D flat, down to the G flat, F, E flat, D flat, and then that D flat is tied over into the next bar. So if we look again at the piano part, the voice part a little bit later on, we'll see that motive appearing in a few different places. So notably here, the D flat down to the G flat, F, E flat, and D flat, I will soon be home. That's really important language in this particular piece. In fact, the very end of the piece is also that, I will soon be home. And this is a piece about death. It's to the unknown soldier. So these are really important words that we need to understand and appreciate in context, and understand that this piano part is actually overlaying those two motives and both of them are important, and both of them carry words that are significant for the piece. So continuing on with this example, if we look at just the mechanics of how this works and how we can play it as pianists, it's actually fairly complicated to do all of the things that I think the composer really wants us to do. So let's take, for example, this moment. We've got half notes that are rolled up to this high F. We've already talked about the motivic content there. That's important to realize. We have in the left hand 2 quarter notes. So Shawn is a wonderful composer. He's a very detailed composer. If Shawn had wanted this to be held underneath this note in the pedal, he could have written this as a half note. This first quarter note he could have written as a half note and found a way to notate these 2 pitches as quarter notes separately from that. So if he had wanted this chord here to be held, in other words, in the pedal, or to be sustained, he could have written that as a half note. He didn't. He wrote it as a quarter note. So in my mind, that's a sign that we need to make sure this is only a quarter note, that is only a quarter note, and meanwhile this half note is held above it. So the simple solution would be to pedal this downbeat and hold the pedal through that second beat. That would allow us to sustain this entire half note up here through to the next half note. But the problem is, if we just pedal that, we're going to have this first chord sustained underneath this one, which is exactly what I don't want to do because he wrote it as a quarter note. So there's really not an easy way to do that. And you might be asking, well, why can't you just hold this with your hand? Well, the reason is I can't reach that interval from a B flat to an F, and I'll show you what that looks like. The B flat to the F, you're talking a range from here, B flat to F. So my hand doesn't do that. I can reach a ninth, I can reach a minor 10th. I certainly can't reach all the way up to this F up here. So that's impossible for me, and I think probably for most people I know that would be impossible to actually reach that. So what do we do there? What can we do? There's a solution that I've found that I'm happy with, and it involves a couple of techniques. It involves retaking notes silently so that they are not sounded, but they're just held down. And it involves a little bit of what we call redistribution. In other words, we take certain notes that are written in one staff, which, for example, in this staff here, what we'll do is actually we'll take this note, this G flat, and we're going to play it with the right hand. So even though it's written down here in this bottom staff, we'll take it with the right hand. I'm going to erase that and try it one more time just a little bit cleaner. Like that. Okay, so in terms of what that looks like at the piano, I'm going to give you a better angle here on my hand so you can see what I'm doing, and we'll illustrate that. So again, we're gonna take this G flat with our right hand, and we're gonna do a little bit of retaking of notes silently so that we can achieve this half note duration in the right hand while also honoring the left hand quarter note. And I'll show you what that looks like. So the easier solution of putting the pedal down through the first 2 beats, it's easier, but we lose the quarter note values that the composer wrote into the score. It sounds like this. So as you can hear, this first quarter note is held through like a half note. That's not really what the composer wrote. So instead, we're going to play this. I'm going to isolate it on the second beat. I'll stop so that you can hear it clearly. It's a really beautiful effect. So how are we doing that? Let me demonstrate first the right hand alone. So as you can see, we can't reach that top F, or at least I can't, without releasing the other notes. I certainly can't hold all of them at the same time. So what I'm going to do is play those notes and then silently retake them with the left hand. Okay, one more time. Okay. So I can also now add the left hand chord in the beginning. That's what it sounds like. One more time. Now all we need to do is add in beat 2 of the left hand, which is this D flat and G flat together. The problem is I don't have enough fingers left because I've already played B flat, C, F, and A flat, but I also need a D flat and a G flat. So I can take the D flat with my left hand right here, and what I can do is bring my right hand thumb down and play the G flat. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm doing what's called a finger substitution in my right hand. So I've played this. I like playing that with 3, and then I switch to 5, bring my thumb down for the G flat. I'm going to play the whole thing together. Quite a beautiful effect. One more time. I'd like to talk next about the phrasing and shaping that we need to think about in any piece, and we're going to take this as an example. So as we discussed earlier, this motivic content from the high B flat down through the F and the D flat, that is outlining a shape that's important in the piece. That's coming from the vocal line, for example, right, if I can find it, sorry, one second, right here, soon be home. So that's an example of that motivic line, and this happens in other places as well. So that shape, if you can imagine Rhiannon Giddens singing this, or some other wonderful musician singing this beautifully, there would be a certain shape to that. So I haven't heard her sing this yet, but I'm anticipating that it will have a shape that essentially outlines a beautiful taper, something like this, and I'll follow her, of course. But when we're thinking about what that means for the piano part, we need to be sensitive to that and really shape it beautifully. So we need to do something similar. We need to create a shape of a diminuendo here. Now the problem is this is already very soft. This is a very, very soft part of the piece. If we look at the dynamic markings prior to this, we see that this is a piano marking. This is actually piano, and that lasts throughout this entire section. So this whole thing is quiet. And so we're already very soft, so we can't get too soft so that we have nowhere to go. We need to save some room, but we do need to come down. Now looking at this moment, these two B flats are sort of tapering off. So I'm going to actually just decide to make these B flats part of that same idea. We're going to taper down. Now at the same time, this A flat with the downstem is leading up to this D flat and then going on from there. So this line, again, this motivic line right here, is coming from this idea to have an ending. Right here is the text there. That's one instance. Another instance that I've shared with you before also is here, I will soon be home, which is repeated actually 2 more times. I will soon be home, and then at the very, very end, I will soon be home. So that's a very, very important motivic element in the piece. And again, if we think about how a sensitive musician would shape that when they're singing it, I would anticipate again that Rhiannon would do a beautiful diminuendo towards that ending. So probably what would make sense, if we're going to have to come down from here, from this D flat all the way down through that line, is that we will need to prepare that. Now we're already soft, so we need to give ourselves a little wiggle room. So we're going to come up here to give ourselves a little bit of room to come down again. And so what we end up with is this really interesting situation where we have this diminuendo from here. I'm going to just draw it out a little bit longer so you can see. So we've got this long diminuendo in this top line. So we're looking at essentially this part, right? That's a long diminuendo. Meanwhile, we have this other voice in the right hand that's starting a crescendo up to this moment. Now, we've talked about redistribution a little bit. You could actually play these notes with the left hand if you wanted to, because you could take this low G flat while still playing this with the left hand, and you can do both. So we could actually try that and see what works better. But the main point is we've got this diminuendo here, we've got a crescendo here, and then this line right here, the F, G flat, A flat, B flat, this one, it's another motivic element actually. That also comes into play in other places. Let me back up a little bit actually. So for example, right here, I will remember. That text right there at the beginning of that same phrase, I will remember. So this is, I said phrase, but basically the section that starts here and ends where we're discussing right here is that line. So the composer Shawn is really combining all of these really important motivic moments that have this important text that carry with them. I will remember, and the words I will soon be home, and this idea of an ending. All of these things are really important concepts in the text that Marcus wrote, and also in the music that Shawn wrote. So these are really vital motivic moments that we need to play beautifully and think of them as individual lines in a polyphonic setting, and not just as layers in a vertical sonority. So let's try that section and see how it sounds all together. The last thing we'll look at is right here in measures 30 and 31. You'll notice that I've marked these notes here, E flat, D flat, and C, as being in my left hand. That's what the blue line above those notes means. And then I'm going to retake the low B flat and F in my left hand silently so that I can release these two notes here on the rest, but still honor this dotted half note duration that should not be released until beat 4. And I'll demonstrate that now. One more time, the entire phrase. Thanks so much for watching and for letting me share this with you. Have a great day.